Hey everybody, Tara Bachland here with the Wifey Wake Up No Makeup podcast because any time of the day is a great time of the day to wake up, metaphorically, right? And no makeup because what you see is what you get. That's what this is all about. So, with all that behind us, well, first of all, I do have a little bit of makeup on because if I didn't have a little bit of powder, I would be reflecting like crazy. And a little bit of lip gloss. I love this Jane Iredale one. Because my lips won't disappear then. Just, so a little bit. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I think it's an interesting topic to me to cover, which is your body just yours or is it his too? And by his, just to be very clear from the beginning, I mean your husbands. I don't mean your boyfriends. I don't mean your partners. I don't mean your roommate, basically. I mean your husband, someone that you have committed your life to, and that may just be on a legal basis if you got married in the court, for example. Hopefully you did it also in front of friends and family and saying your vows and your promises to each other, which really solidifies it on that spiritual level as well, and I think really enriches that commitment. So let's get started. It's all about my body, my choice, right? Well, that changes once you get married if you want to have a marriage that's beyond a contract. And I think what is really messing things up these days is people want to have that spiritual, emotional connection, that forever love and bliss. And I think that's possible. I mean, we're going on 25 years and we are stronger, more in love than ever, and have an amazing time together. But it takes work. It takes seeing your relationship beyond a contract. It's not I do this and you do that. We from the beginning really saw us as combining our lives and making one life and one family together. So that could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself, but just let that sit for a little bit. But today I'm going to focus on the physical, and the emotional, the spiritual is a wonderful topic as well, but I want to get focused here. So let's talk about the physical. Does he have a say over your body about a variety of things that go on in your body? Well, let's before we get all hot about that, because that's a kind of a triggering topic, right? Let's take a step back and just think about wives of men who are in the military or in law enforcement. And I would imagine that they likely almost always live in the fear of their husbands being severely injured. And so just sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it helps to take things to the extreme to kind of get a reality check. And imagine also those wives, take it down a notch, who are married to someone who totally neglects their body. He's eating junk food, he's drinking too much, just eating on the road, not exercising. I think they also could really justify being concerned. And there's more to it than that. I realized one day, there was more than one day that I worried about my own husband's health and wellness. And he takes care of himself quite well. He taught me about health and nutrition and vitamins and drinking water. Imagine that. But there have been times where I've been concerned. And what hit me one day, what I realized is that I wasn't as much concerned about him and what he would go through. I was worried about me. I was worried about how I would have to deal with the fallout if something happened to him. And then it really hit me like, oh, I'm actually being really selfish. I'm more concerned about what I'm going to have to deal with if he gets, let's say have a heart attack or something like that, than his actual well-being. And that really was part of a real turnaround. I'm getting distracted by the comments. I love your comments, and I am going to address them in a little bit because I love chatting with you all. Good to see you all, and thanks. That hutch, by the way, was a secondhand find, and I think it's beautiful as well. Got a good deal on that one. All right, so the real question is it, well, the real question, I'm obviously flipping the script first of all so we can get some perspective. So is it reasonable, how much is it reasonable for us as wives to ask our husbands to take care of themselves? And is it the same for him for him to expect that from us. So when, as far as this pertains to mine and my husband's marriage, again, we've been married almost 25 years now, and we have spoken and we have unspoken standards. And we line up on a lot of these already. So a lot of them don't even have to be spoken about, although my husband's very good and adamant about communicating, which I really appreciate. Most people might think that the woman is the communicator. In our situation, my husband really is, even though ironically I'm the one doing the podcast here. He's very good at that and will bring up issues before they become issues. And so we line up a lot of things, which is really great and very helpful. And there are things that don't really need discussing. So for example, I know I can observe that for him, his standard of where he likes to have his, let's say, body mass ratios at is already at a standard that is as good as or better than what I would hope for or expect. And so that doesn't really take much talking. Usually what happens is he's bringing it up to me and going, oh, I just want to get in a little bit better shape. I want to, do this, do that sort of thing. So it's not that we're trying to keep anything away from each other or are afraid to address that. It's just that through conversation, we can already hear that we're on par with one another. But there are times where you really do need to address something, maybe, and not be afraid to. It's really important that you talk about the difficult things. And rather than going into all that, I think you all can imagine what that might be in a particular case. And that goes both ways. So obviously, whatever you do to your body impacts the other spouse, because you're more than a contract. Again, I have to emphasize this. You are so intertwined that what you do to your body, mind and emotions as well, impacts the other person. So if he's not wearing a helmet, for example, going on a motorcycle, she has to deal with the repercussions. If she is drinking every night, that the potential health consequences would affect him as well. And this really happened. This actually happened to us, and I'm going to give one more strategy here before I tell a little bit of story of actually how this happened in our life, because that's really what this is about. Wifey School is teaching from experience, not just pablum, right? What you want to hear. Sometimes you're going to hear some things you don't want to hear. And so when I realized that I was worrying more about his condition because I was worried about me and the impacts it would have on me, I've kept this strategy from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is a classic book. There's a reason it's been on the bookshelves and promoted as a great tool for so long. And it's because it works. It's effective. And the one tool that I really remember from that book, because I ingrained it in my brain, because I was an exceptional worrier at one point. Not exceptional warrior, an exceptional worrier. My husband's walking by and he's smiling and laughing. Yes, West of Picos is saying taking care of the body must be reciprocal. Well, I don't like to use this term, but it's fair, right? And again, I kind of cringe when I say that, but when it's reciprocal, you're thinking about the other person as well, not just yourself. But it feels good to feel good and take care of yourself. So how to stop worrying and stop living. The tool is imagine what you're worrying about, the situation going to the worst situation you can imagine. Sounds crazy, right? Sounds like, why would I even do that and put myself through that torture? Actually, it's a tool that is similar from, I've done Jordan Peterson's self-authoring program, and he does a similar technique, well, basically the same technique as a part of that. And it's a really, really, obviously good tool if it's repeated in these very highly acclaimed resources. Anyway, so imagine the worst case scenario. So for example, let's take the motorcycle one, because it's taking care of your body in a different way. And he gets in a motorcycle accident and is paralyzed or quadriplegic. It's not that him dying is the worst situation. It's horrific, okay? Don't get me wrong. But if a person is incapacitated and the spouse is in charge, basically the only one that can take care of them, or is in charge of other people taking care of them and the resources that go into that, that I can imagine is typically the worst case scenario. And so it seems strange to think upon that. But what happens is when you do that, any degree in between, any lesser severity becomes easier to comprehend and think of the solution. And so that's just one resource. So if you're imagining what worries you the most about your spouse, for example, maybe you are actually concerned about your husband's eating habits and what effect that could have. And that's very different, obviously, than just someone's physique, but we're covering the gamut here. So real life scenario here. A couple of years ago, my husband actually had a life-threatening condition, and we went through all this. We went through basically the worst case scenario situation. The silver lining is that he was able to at least get up and take care of himself to a certain degree, because I was running a business, my business that is herbal online education business that was full-time plus. I was training contractors. I was not quite at the point where I could let that go. I didn't know if we would have to be full-time depending on that income at that point or at some point. So I was in a bind where I wanted to be there as much as I could for my husband, and I also had that other responsibility to take care of. And without going into all the details, it took a good couple of years to get everything back online. And all kinds of resources, time, money, and then what you will lose in the meantime, which you may be able to imagine, when you're not at your full capacity. And what I learned from that is really what are the priorities in life. And it gave me a glimpse of, wow, what if something additionally happened to my husband or to me, and how precious not only life is and health is, but just being able to do things, have energy to do normal things for 8 hours in a day. And it was it really opened my mind. And it was actually a very pivotal time in my life. And so I want to take this to, of course, we're talking about physique, because that comes up, especially for men. Men, I know, get really long for, I think a number of them are actually rather reasonable when it comes to the physique they expect or would like their wives to have into their later years in marriage. But I think we as women take that very offensively. Wow, I'm going off on tangents that I really am. I wanted to keep this shorter, so you know where I'm going with that, right? We're talking about the physique, but also your health on the inside, because they're related, right? But they have very different directions impacting the marriage. Okay. So what I want to get into is expectations. Expectations and realities are very important. So at this point in mine and our lives, my husband, I don't expect him to have a six-pack. That would not be reasonable. And if he expected the equivalent of me, that wouldn't be necessarily reasonable as well. You also have different times in your life, not only physique-wise and what's going on hormonally and all that, but also work, what's going on in work and life. However, and again, also, I don't expect him to have a Captain American body, biceps. I think it looks kind of silly anyways. We both actually have a mutual appreciation for a healthy body, a body that looks like it can move, and you can do the regular things that you want to do in life and do the extra things that you want to do in life. And our goals are also at this point more long-term. So when we're 60 and 70, when we're 70 and 80, we're able to bike ride, we're able to walk down the sidewalk, for example, holding hands, of course. And it makes it more of a reasonable goal, because trying to have the Captain America body now can really ruin your health for the future. Training your body super hard now, if I were trying to be Mrs. America, don't get any ideas, John, he's here. He says, I have an 8-pack, it's called a mini keg. There we go. Is you have to have reasonable goals and expectations is my point. So, but what we do expect from each other and of ourselves is to eat very mindfully, drink very mindfully, work our training so that we can do those things for the long run is our goal. It's not just about following the latest biohackers protocols because we're dogmatically following that. And similarly, following, having unrealistic goals as far as trying to do things that we could do in our 20s, for example, or having a physique that a 20 or 30-year-old might have. It doesn't mean to give up, right? You have to have healthy and reasonable goals. So I'm curious, what do you think is reasonable that you can expect from him? And what do you think is reasonable that he can expect from you? I think it's going to change at different points in your life, but for me, the point is, and in our marriage, is that we're doing our best reasonably at every point in life. There are times, for example, when he wasn't well, that I wasn't working out like I was. That was really hard because I was working all the time, felt to me, well, I was working all the time, keeping up the house, my business, and doing whatever I could to help and support him. And there wasn't much time left for me. Now, if you're in a prolonged state like that, you're going to have to find some way to take care of yourself because eventually you are going to burn out. Is one way it's going to wear you out. But sometimes you need to do that in the short term. And in that short term, also, we need to be compassionate with each other as a couple. Because again, it's not a contract. It's not a contract where you do this and I do that. And if you're not doing this, I won't do that. It is a team. You have a team goal and a team effort. It's not a to-do list. It's not a cleaning list. So I just really have to emphasize that because it really does go back and forth both ways. It is reciprocal. And that's the difference between being reciprocal, interdependent, working together, being in a covenant, being truly together, mind, body, spirit, rather than just mind and checking off lists. Okay. Would love to hear from you on this one. This is I think a big and an important topic. And let's see, we have West of Pico stirring the pot here. The woman who denies her man pleasure means that she doesn't respect him and doesn't admire him. I think that's a little bit different topic where we're talking about denying him pleasure. So I'm perceiving that you mean intimacy, but that's a great other topic. But I could see how this precedes that, right? Where her keeping up her appearance, and again, that's going to be on communicating with him. Sometimes it's just trying a little bit more. There are those days where it's like it's coming from all angles, but just that little thing. I think guys, probably better than women, notice the little things. Maybe not if you just got your hair done, but notice if you're making an effort to really be, I would say, a difference between a wifey and a wife to him. And my hubby says the romance is up to the man. And we did do a podcast about that because even when he told me that surprised me. But the more we've talked about it, it made sense. And I'm very appreciative for that. I did hear in a talk today also a man saying that he thinks that men are actually more romantic than women. And so those seem like they would be tied together, right? If the man is generally more romantic, thinking that how a relationship begins is how it's going to continue. They're always going to be lovey-dovey and there's going to be kisses and snuggles all the time. It sounds like he said that. John's saying yes with all capitals and exclamation points. So that must be, I'm translating, that's what guys mean. We think as women, I'll speak for myself, that, we're in tune and we understand and we see all these nuances and we understand what people are saying. But there still is something that obviously, even still today, I am learning. What do guys mean? What is it that they want? And let's see. John's chiming again. Men want to romance and women want to be romanced. Well, that sounds like a great combo. And I should end it there because it sounds like I'm about to be romanced. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.